So any little bit of pocket change you've got, we have a place where you can contribute by credit card or drop some cash in a box right up the stairs at the top of the elevator or the stairwell. So again, thank you for coming out and supporting us. Thank you for telling all your friends to come, because it's clear that you have a lot of people in the room. So at this time, I get to hand it over to our World's Fair Society President, Mike Truex. You ready?
Mike.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for coming. It's more than we expected, obviously. And I've misplaced my phone and probably put it somewhere, obviously. Okay, I want to welcome everyone to the April meeting of the World's Fair Society. Most of you know that I'm Mike Truex. Well, I'm trying to talk to both Carrie and also kind of be in the picture here and close enough to that, but we'll make this work. It's two birthdays today. One is the World's Fair opening and the other is the World's Fair Society had their first meeting. So you know what we got to do on a birthday? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday, World's Fair Society. Happy birthday to you. Okay, one of the other things I want to do here, of course, we're going to see amazing pictures put together by our charter member, Charles Koehler. And I usually ask for any new members or guests, and obviously we have a lot of people from the History Museum here today. I want to welcome our special guest, Karen Gehring, and her husband, Lawrence, who are some pretty high workers at the History Museum for, I don't know how many years, 15?
42.
Oh, I don't know if you heard that or not. I think she said 42. So thank you for all you've done for us in the History Museum. We normally want to recognize our charter members on opening day, but if the charter members can hang around after this meeting and we can squeeze it in, I'd like the charter members to come up to take a picture, but I don't think I want to do that right now just because of the timing and what we are doing. We basically turned about 25 people away, told them to come back at either 2:30 or 3 o'clock. So we're going to try to be done at 2:30 so that Adam can give his presentation about the new exhibit that many of us saw, at least in the World's Fair Society last month. I'm going to take just 1 minute and talk about a quick update about upcoming society meetings and events. It's also on the bulletin and on our website. Friday, May 5th, this coming Friday, we're doing something new at the St. Louis Science Center from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock to promote the fair and the society. They have a First Fridays event. The theme this May is the Titanic. If you haven't been to the Science Center lately, come on by and stop by our booth and check us out. For the World's Fair Society members, and if you're not a member of the World's Fair Society, there are handouts available. You probably got one, and one handout tells about the World's Fair, one tells about the World's Fair Society, and we have monthly meetings and stuff. In May, we're going to have a picnic at Kirkwood Park, Campbell Pavilion on Saturday, May 20th at noontime. And there's more information on that. And then a meeting in June at the Booter Library. So with that, Charles, would you mind hitting the space bar when I look at you or whatever? We're going to travel back in time to Saturday, April 30th, 1904. It was a sunny day and the sun quickly burned off the morning haze and removed the chill in the air. The crowds in anticipation arrived early, walking past the statue of St. Louis and into the plaza. The planning and construction of the fair had been going for almost 3 years. And for weeks, the new song, "Meet Me in St. Louis," continued to rise in popularity through the city and region. Everyone knew the song, and excitement was peaking as the fair was getting closer and closer. Thousands of workers had been working double shift for the last several weeks, put finishing touches for the fair's opening, and especially since the April 20th snowstorm dropped 5.5 inches on the city of St. Louis and the World's Fair. Tens of thousands of exhibits have arrived and were placed in their exhibit palaces, and more are arriving every day. But for today, all was done. The governor and mayor declared state and city holidays, and everyone was so excited. Numerous invited dignitaries arrived from city, state, and the region, all formally attired. They came from the U.S. government building and the east. The fair organizers arrived from Administration Hall and the west. According to the official count, 187,000 people came through the turnstiles, most crowded around the Louisiana Purchase Monument between the palaces of manufacturers and varied industries. They filled the plaza both in front and behind the reserved seating area. Once the VIPs were seated and after a short prayer, David R. Francis gave a short welcome speech, and he spoke these words.
Open ye gates, swing wide ye portals, enter herein ye sons of men. Learn the lesson here taught, and gather from it inspiration and greater accomplishment.
David R. Francis was the president of the Louisiana Purchase Expedition, and several more speeches followed, about 2 hours. From the rostrum at the foot of the Louisiana Purchase Monument, with people shouting out their words to be heard. Representing President Roosevelt was Secretary of War William Howard Taft, who became president later on. The spectacular opening was about to begin. David Francis stepped down off the rostrum and touched a telegraph key to send a signal to the White House. President Theodore Roosevelt pressed another golden telegraph key in return to signal the opening of the fair. That telegraph key was also used 11 years before to open the Chicago World's Fair in 1893. Then all the stops were pulled out and the band began to play. John Philip Sousa. The flags were unfurled and the magnificent cascades and fountains began to run. The palaces were open and the parade finally began. The fair was finally open. Fairgoers eagerly spread out all over the fairgrounds to see the different buildings and exhibits. Can you just imagine after 3 years of waiting? And so now it's time for our presentation. And Lindsay, I'm not sure how to turn that projector off, but Charles is going to get his ready. I turn this off. Is Lindsay out in the hallway back there? Is there anyone who knows how to turn the projector off? See if Adam Coffey's out there, he might know. Anybody from the History Museum? I just want to turn that projector off.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, you can go ahead and get your stuff. There you go. Okay, now it's time for a presentation. A little bit about our presenter, Charter Member Charles Koehler, played a significant role in establishing the World's Fair Society in 1986. He also served as the Society's first vice president. He continues to promote the fair through his programs to the Society, and he also gives regular classes through St. Louis Community College at Forest Park. Titled Relive the 1904 World's Fair, it includes 3D slide presentation like you're going to see, and also a tour of several World's Fair sites in Forest Park. Here's Charles.
Thank you. Thank you. So I need everyone to give me a show of hands. How many people would be interested if they could travel back in time 119 years ago today to visit the 1904 World's Fair? Show of hands. Yeah, good. You only have to stay there about 23 minutes because that's how long this slideshow is, okay? I wouldn't want to be there without penicillin and other things that we have, we take completely for granted today. But, yeah, so, what we'll be doing is a little bit of time travel, and to make that, possible, that's only possible because of the invention of something like this, okay? Anyone familiar with this? Okay, it's a stereopticon, somebody people call it, and it has, stereo view cards in it. And so I was really fortunate that this has happened around 35 years ago or more. Two World's Fair Society members that were Bill Peeber and Yvonne Seuss had a collection of stereo view cards of the 1904 World's Fair. They lent them to me. I took I took slides of the different sides of the view cards, right and left side, put them into slide mounts, pin registered them, put them into slide projectors, and then using special polarized lenses in front of the projectors, using a special silver lenticular screen. It doesn't show on a regular screen. And then your 3D glasses that you have all working together, along with a soundtrack that includes music written by Scott Joplin and narration. We're able to do this time travel back in time. In essence, we'll be having a portal into the past. And I think it's really fitting that we're showing this in this room 119 years ago, where on this day, very close to where this building is right now, there are all these people coming on the fairgrounds for the very first time. Pretty cool. So this will be a time travel portal into the past. Okay, for 23 minutes, we'll see what other fairgoers would have seen in the same grounds that we're in right now. So without further ado, and crossing your fingers that everything works, because the equipment is around 40 years old. We hope that it'll run through okay. So good. I just put it over there. Okay, I have it on mute.
So now's the time to put your glasses on and for everyone to watch the screen, and Charles will wait until we give him the cue so that we can get a picture of 125 people or so, all with their glasses looking at the screen. Now I'm going to catch this side over here. Rotate. This is for posterity.
120 years from
Okay, Charles, over to you. I'll dim the lights just a little bit more.
We'll need the light off on the podium and special.
Okay. You know what that means. Ooh. Ooh.
It was 1904. Millions of visitors passed through these magical gates. There, they've experienced one of the greatest events ever to take place. The Louisiana Purchase Exposition of 1904, the St. Louis World Fair. Once inside, they rode along the plaza of St. Louis, and onto the magnificent Louisiana Purchase Monument. Here was a natural gathering place and a central speaking platform for the many dignitaries. Honored guests from around the world addressed crowds and reviewed parades from this vantage point. Parades were an almost daily occurrence at the fair. Every band, organization, convention, or congress was certain to participate. After listening to a speech or reviewing a parade, visitors would move on to explore the huge exhibition house. Here was showcased the progress of mankind. This palace of electricity was created to demonstrate the wonders of electricity. Here, visitors were treated to such exhibits as the manufacturing of incandescent light bulbs, the marvels of a wireless telegraph station, the magic of X-rays, and a modern electrical generation plant. For the first time in the history of exposition, education was elected to be its central theme. This Palace of Education showed the process of education from kindergarten to university. Here at the Palace of Liberal Arts was showcased all phases of graphic arts, medicine and surgery, music and theater, and civil and architectural engineering. Over 35 foreign countries participated in exhibits and demonstrations. The nearby Palace of Mines and Metallurgy showcased 9 acres of mining tools and products. Participating states had imposing displays of coal, lead, zinc, with a wide range of other ores, clays, stones, and glass. The Palace of Liberal Arts and Mines and Metallurgy was the popular Stockton Gardens. Here, a vista of blooming plants was framed by broad walks. This display of flowers and bright foliage was a delight to the eye and provided a resting place for weary visitors. The stately government building allowed visitors to browse among exhibits of the Treasury Department, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, the U.S. Mint, and the Smithsonian Institute. Mammoth bird cage, over 200 feet long and 50 feet high, housed hundreds of birds from around the globe, all in their natural surroundings. The palaces of manufacturing and dairy industries both display a world marketplace of merchandise. Manufacturing display utilitarian products such as textiles and hardware, while dairy industries displayed goods manufactured to please the eye such as pottery, jewelry, and art glass. Both buildings included a live demonstration of the processes used in the production of these goods. The Midvalley Types of Transportation highlighted the expansion of the Louisiana Purchase territory. Here was shown the rapid transition from canoe to steamboat, from packhorse to steel railways. Here, bicycles, locomotives, streetcars, and automobiles filled the aisles. Visitors were also witness to the first successful dirigible flights ever made at the World's Exposition. This gas-filled balloon made hundreds of ascents, giving visitors a spectacular view of the exposition. No palace emphasized the show of live processes more than this palace of machinery. Inside, scores of exhibits, both great and small, showed the production of all forms of familiar machinery and power tools. Nearly every state and territory erected a state house, which served as a resting place for weary visitors. Often, they were copies of historic buildings and many exhibiting materials for which the state was known. Example is the Washington State Building, which represented the timber resources of that commonwealth. Alaska contained a stereopticon theater showing hundreds of Alaskan themes. New Mexico contained the oldest bell in the United States, made in Spain nearly a century and a half before the discovery of America. Wisconsin's architecture was said to be thoroughly American, and thus was awarded the grand prize for state homes. New York, with its spacious corridors, broad porticos, and excellent restaurants, was said to be the social center of the exposition. The Iowa State Building design combined the best features of the old state capitol at Iowa City and the new one at Des Moines. Ohio, as in other state houses, furnished living quarters for state dignitaries and employees of the building. Kansas, with its spires and beautiful gardens, reflected the architecture of the state. The most imposing and expensive state structure on the grounds was the Missouri Building. It was destroyed by fire just weeks before the fair ended. Here we see the model city, a 1,200-foot long American municipal street with schools, civic buildings, and a hospital, the finest that progress had to offer. The Palace of Art, near the center of the exposition, was one of the few buildings built to be permanent. Inside were displayed old art masters, but the emphasis was on newer art created since the Columbian Exposition of 1893. People from nearly every country on earth celebrated mankind's advance since the Louisiana Purchase. Many countries joined in this celebration. Belgium, for instance, designed its building in the form of a cross. Its entire curved framework was an example of Belgium's fine structural steel industry. This Swedish pavilion, built entirely in Sweden, represented a typical Swedish farmhouse of the 17th century. Germany, with its giant gold bronze eagle, was a replica of the Kaiser's country home. It occupied a spectacular setting on Art Hill. This French National Pavilion was an exact replica of the French Renaissance mansion built for the Gardens of Versailles. These Japanese imperial gardens were a spectacle of landscaping. Here, dwarf trees, centuries old, grew amidst ridges, waterfalls, and ponds. Canada provided an elegant two-story structure surrounded by broad verandas and manicured floral gardens. Nearby was the largest and most attractive timepiece at the fair, the floral clock. This giant 112-foot clock, with hands weighing over 2,500 pounds, proved to be one of the most novel and imaginative attractions of the exposition. At night, this landscaping marvel was illuminated by more than 1,000 brilliant twinkling lights. Behind this magnificent clock was the Palace of Agriculture, the largest of the palaces, with nearly 20 acres under one roof. Here we could find miles of exhibits showcasing the finest of crops and farm machinery. States created statues and palaces made of their region's crops. Wisconsin even fashioned a statue of Teddy Roosevelt on horseback, all made of butter. Windmills demonstrated modern wind engines of nearly every shape and design. We visit the Palace of Horticulture, with its extensive exhibits of seeds, nuts, fruits, and flowers from around the world. Visitors to the forestry, fish, and game exhibit use forest geography and lumbering operations through extensive transparencies, pictures, and realistic mounted specimens. Popular attraction was the Igorot village of the Filipino exhibit. These huts and boats were built by the natives according to their own design. Actually, 3 distinct tribes of Igorots were represented at the fair, but fairgoers tended to consider them as one, perhaps because of their similar diets.
Still on it.
Nearby was a daily recreation of the recent border war. Over 600 veterans of the war would reenact spectacular battle scenes, complete with cannons, wagons, and a cliff diving horse. The administrative offices of the fair were housed in the newly constructed buildings of Washington University. And nearby, the physical culture department held the first Olympic Games played in the United States. From almost any vantage point, there was one attraction that was hard to miss: a colossal observation field. The giant steel cobwebs of this magnificent structure carried passengers up for a spectacular view of the fair. So popular and large was this attraction that a cowboy married his bride while atop one of the cars. A mile-long avenue of wonders, amusement, and exotic entertainment. Here was a mixture of sights and sounds to be found nowhere else on earth. The streets of Asia transported visitors to the distant lands of Cairo, with its many buildings, exotic architecture. Here were the streets of Constantinople, the bazaars of Istanbul, and the sounds of a Turkish world. Here, Japan showcased some of the most beautiful displays of any nations. Ireland recreated all the charm and history of that emerald isle. The Tyrolian Alps came to America and towered over a recreated Tyrolian village. Inside this man-made mountain, a tram conveyed visitors on a trip through mountain valleys and streams. Outside, a German beer garden and friendly plow lines welcomed visitors. cave dwellings from the Stone Age were reproduced by cliff dwellers. Here were the Zuni Indians, descendants from an ancient race of kings. Nearby, the Common Indians exhibit and Wild West show gathered over 50 tribes of North American Indians. Among those present was Chief Geronimo. The exotic Agendac circus brought together animals from every corner of the globe. Animal performances were given continuously in the 3,000 feet arena. Famous Battle of Santiago was recreated daily by a fleet of miniature U.S. foreign warships. Guns, fire, and smoke added to the excitement of the show. The nearby New York to North Pole transported visitors by ship from a New York harbor to the frigid North Pole, complete with Arctic winds. This magic whirlpool contained a circular cascade 80 feet in diameter, central 60-foot fountain of crystal water, a truly spectacular sight. Creation provided a magnificent illusion founded on the Bible's book of Genesis. This temple of birth was a labyrinth, mirrors, confusing effects, and laughter with a 2-story spiral ride. And the sheep-for-sheep waterfall was said to be the longest and highest ever built. Still running on the 1.5 of waterways, providing visitors with an ever-changing view of magnificent palaces, statues, fountains, and waterfalls. Distinguished artists created colossal statues with themes that echoed man's struggle for westward expansion and the plight of the Native Americans. Sparkling fountains surrounded visitors as they flowed along the plaza. Perhaps the fair's most impressive sight is the grand basin, with its richly decorated terraced space. Here, colossal statues represent the 14 states and territories of the Louisiana Purchase. Festival Hall, the crowning glory of exposition, with its pollinated states, ornate restaurant pavilions, and the central cascades and gardens. This was one of the most pleasing vistas anywhere. Splashing fountains, the cascades, the splendid dome of Festival Hall. All this picture of cancer. We've seen just a few of the hundreds of marvelous things and thousands of spectacular signs. It would be difficult if things from these scenes of things
So how was the 3D?
Awesome.
There was, I know, more than half of them have really good 3D because there's people in the foreground or a statue in the foreground and then stuff way back and you just really catch that sense of depth because I'll bet you if I asked how many people had a Viewmaster when you were a kid, almost everybody would raise their hand. That same type of effect. What time is it? It's 2:08. It's 2:08. We probably have time for a few questions here and there, and I also want to get the charter members as we break for the next presentation in 20 minutes. But does anybody have any questions about what they just saw or heard for charms? Okay, you want?
When they threw it on observation rules, what did they send it to? When it was still there?
Okay, I'll answer that one. We have a member who's been researching the Ferris wheel for 25 years. He's been in touch with the owners of the Ferris wheel's descendants, the Harris Brothers Company, the Chicago House Record Company that owned it. They tried to sell the Ferris wheel to Coney Island and also to the Highlands, and they didn't want to pay to have it relocated, even though they would have made money in 2 years. They blew it up in May 1906 with scrap. The axle kind of dug its way into the ground. There are many, many people who believe the axle was buried in Forest Park. Going back to the 1930s, people have searched for the axle. However, other than finding some bits and pieces and scrap, they've never found anything to prove that it was in Forest Park. Records from the Chicago House Record Company that survived, and he has copies of, indicate they weren't going to leave it behind. It was worth $1,000 back then. They had moved it from Chicago down here to build the Ferris wheel. It started at the Chicago World's Ferris wheel, so they knew how to move it. Training tracks were still there. You know, they did big things. The wrecking company, salvage was their business. Yes, they couldn't cut it up with the torches in 1906, but torches got better over the next 10 years, and they knew the torches would get better with oxy acetylene torches. So they put it on some train cars and took it back to Chicago, where it was in their yard for about 10 years. 1918, they finally cut it up when the torches got better. And that's documented in a newspaper article in 1907. Not in depth, but enough to say, yeah, they took it back to Chicago.
I asked people like around here and they all try to look for everything. Towards you, over here, towards Park.
Right. There is an article online where a guy used a cesium magnetometer and walked all around there. He believes it's buried under shingle. Well, if you had something that back then was worth $1,000 and today is worth $30,000, would you spend any time and effort burying it? No, you take it with you and eventually use it for something productive to help your business. That's what people who have read all the stuff that he has produced and the World Fair Society has published articles on. We are 98% sure of that. Sorry to destroy the romantic urban legend. Yes, ma'am.
It's your answers part, I'm sure there's a very long answer. Why was something that was built on such a grand scale that our area was so proud of? And it should have been preserved better than it was. Why was so much of it destroyed and not preserved?
Why was so much of the fair destroyed? We followed the pattern that the Chicago World's Fair did in 1893. This, if you think of Forest Park, 2 square miles, the eastern half of it was developed as a park, and the city said, no, you can't use that. But you can use the western part of it, which was undeveloped, between essentially Hampton to Bolivar, all the way out to Skinker. That gave them 600 acres to get started, and following the lead of Chicago, in order to build all that stuff in 2 years, you built it fast with lumber and covered it with plaster, and you could do fantastic things with the plaster called staff, make statues. All those statues were temporary. They weren't made to last. They were not stone. The outside of the buildings for that. The Chicago House Wrecking Company that owned the Ferris wheel paid the fair $450,000 for the right to salvage all those big buildings. So they built them temporary, not to last, the last couple of years, be safe for the fair. Because the city's agreement, resolution of the city to allow them to use the World Park for the World's Fair said, build me a permanent art museum and take everything down when you're done, because we want it to be a park of it. So they were under contract to take everything down and, restore it back to being a park. And they negotiated a few things. They built the World's Fair Pavilion. They built the Hist Museum, the old part of the Hist Museum, with profits from the fair. But everything else had to go, including all those magnificent palaces that you just saw. And they were destroyed and also salvaged by the revenue.
Except the bird cage.
Well, a few exceptions are obviously the art museum, the bird cage. Washington University had not been occupied yet, and they rented it for the fair. And I'd like to include one other structure that they made that is pretty much still here today, and that's the Grand Basin. So that's what's left. Any other questions? Yes.
And two, where did the workers came to man all these buildings? Where did they come from? Where did they stay?
Where did the workers come from that built all these buildings, that worked at the fairgrounds, et cetera? I don't have a precise answer for that. There were some workers' camps, there were some tent camps, there were a lot of hotels that were built, there were boarding houses that were anticipating millions of people coming to the fair, which did happen. But they managed to make it work. I think there's a picture, they also used some old trolley cars and train cars as sleeping cars, because they would work for 10 hours a day, take an hour or so to get home, and have 8 hours to go. I'm tired tonight.
Second question is, was ice cream cone really invented in the home?
Okay, was the ice cream cone and hot dog invented? One of the first things I did as I got into the World's Fair in 1996, when I moved to St. Louis, and I discovered that my great grandmother had gone to the fair, and I have a Ruby Flash souvenir with her name on it, little toothpick holder, was I put up a little website based on the advice of the founder of the World Fair Society to answer some of those questions of the legends and myths of the fair and what was invented and what wasn't. So I put this little website up, and I eventually turned that into a magazine. The History Museum up in their gift shop has a lot of books and magazines about the fair. There's a $28 book called Still Shining that shows you where you can still see artifacts from the fair. How many people have been to McConnell's Pub and Tavern? The Chandelier O'Connell's. Okay, pardon me. The chandeliers are from the World's Fair. There's many other things. How many people have been on the brewery trip? and gone to see the Clydesdales down there. When you go into the stable area, there's a big chandelier hanging up there. That's from the World's Fair. That book details a lot of things besides buildings and relocating houses and stuff like that. And coming back to your question about the hot dog and ice cream cone, I took that little website I did and I turned it into a magazine that the History Museum sells for the incredibly expensive price of $6. 32 pages, 70 odd pictures, most of them in color, that explains that the hot dog was in fact sold at baseball parks around 1900 back east as get your dogs, and they were hot, so they wrapped them in bread and it became hot dogs. The ice cream cone, the urban legend that's recognized, well, I won't say legend, the story that is recognized by the International Association of Ice Cream Manufacturers says that they agree that on this certain day, when they sold ice cream at the fair, and they were able to sell ice cream, they had to sell it in, little China cups. And you had to hang around, eat your ice cream and give them the cup back. They didn't have disposable cups and stuff like that. Well, that was kind of hard to do and hard on sales and stuff. And there was nearby a guy making Middle Eastern thin waffle pastries, flat things like little flat pancakes. He figured out how to roll them into a cone, and lo and behold, something they called ice cream cornucopias was born. And probably within a few days, they were all over the place, and there were about 5 or 6 different people that said, we invented it. So it's hard to pin down. The one other part of that story that's detailed in that magazine is that in 1903, this guy in New York City patented a baked cup-like container with a little handle on it, like a little teacup or coffee cup for ice cream. It was edible, like a little baked cup. Was that an ice cream cone? Depends on your perspective. So, any other questions, real quick? I'm sorry. Yes.
I've always understood that a few years prior to the World's Fair, someone analyzed that we could not have muddy water from the town of Cascades.
Yes.
And
The story of water.
And the engineer, who I guess was commissioned, hired to do that and clean up the water, so it would be clear, was actually Russell's brother. Russell, the artist.
Oh, no, the guy who invented that was not related to him. The city and the World's Fair people were worried that using water that St. Louisans were drinking back then was pretty cloudy and pretty dirty looking. Mark Twain talked about some rivers that were too thick to drink and too thin to plow. Missouri and Mississippi might have been considered in that category. And a city employee, about 2 months before the fair, because the World's Fair people, my gosh, look at those fountains and stuff. Do you think that would work with muddy water, turning everything brown? Not very good. They wanted clean water. And a city employee figured out with chemicals how to collect the silt and get that out of there and produce clean water about 6 weeks before the fair. His name was John Wixford. And that's pretty well documented in many websites and stuff like that. But we need to finish up here real quick. I'll take one more question. Yes. The Ferris wheel. I can't answer the Ferris wheel number off the top of my head, but I can tell you that the World's Fair opened April 30th, today, 119 years ago, and closed on December 1st. So a couple days over 7 months. And all that effort to build it and then tear it down went into that.
And the Ferris wheel was 2,160 people at once. That's the size of a small town. You could have everyone in the town be there.
Okay, and one more amazing thing, and then I'm going to ask the charter members to come up and us to make it. I can't take any more questions because there's people waiting to come in. From Charles, if you got kind of go stand in that corner right there, and we asked him to stand maybe in the corner over there. From where you guys are standing all the way to that wall, all the way to this wall back here, from where they're standing, a rectangle, was the size of one Ferris wheel car. You could fit 60 people in this. Now, they didn't always put 60 people in, they typically only put 10 or 15 people in each car because they were selling that many tickets. How many people rode it? Enough for them to make money from moving it down. So if I can ask you all, you can get a cookie or something on the way out. I want to ask for another round of applause for Charles, who put this together. World Fair Society. Oh, Adam Kloppy is going to follow us and tell us about the new exhibit that will be going in for the World Society people. It's the same thing we saw last month. You're welcome to stay if you want. And also at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, I've made a reservation at Seamus McDaniel's in Dogtown on Tam Avenue. SEAMUS, Seamus McDaniel's, a bar and grill for a bunch of us to go eat. And with that, thank you all for coming. Thanks for the overflow crowd. It was a challenge, but lots of fun. Charter members, please come to the front.
I know.
So you charter member?
I don't.
Oh, good.
Sometimes when you're sitting so long, it's hard to get out.
Nobody.
I know.